Hello, and welcome to the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. Today we're doing a 1993 Oscar redo in honor of the 30-year anniversary of the Oscars from honoring the 1993 movies and correspond with Jordan's birthday. This was her birth year. And we decided, we looked at the Oscars this year, and it was pretty much a Schindler's List sweep for the most part, or at least a lot of nominations. And there's a lot of random movies that I actually haven't really seen or heard of before we went through this. So we decided we would go through a few categories and make our own nominations based on what we would do if we were the Oscar voters.
The way you worded that made it sound like I'm turning 30 this year. And it kind of reminded me of that part from No Hard Feelings where she's like, I turned 29 last year. And they're like, oh, so you're 30? And she's like, last year? Like,
yeah,
I'm turning 31 for the record. But the way that it works is like in 1994, the Oscars were basically honoring films from 1993.
Yeah, similar to how the Oscars that are coming out soon for this year are doing the 2023 movie.
Yeah, exactly. But I will be 31.
So I think we'll do Best Picture last to have some sort of
and it
build up, but
it should also be said that like we are not saying what the Oscars and like the Academy should have done. We're just saying if the Academy was made up of just me and Sam and it was completely subjective to our opinions as to what we think, being people that have seen quite a lot of movies, not every single 1993 movie, but the ones we're most interested in seeing.
Okay, so we're going to do the 4 acting categories, director and picture. So for Best Supporting Actress from 1993, the winner was, in real life, Anna Paquin for The Piano.
She was like, how old?
I think she was 9 or 10.
A wee lass.
The other real life nominees were Holly Hunter in The Firm, Rosie Perez in Fearless, Winona Ryder in The Age of Innocence, and Emma Thompson in The Name of the Father. So, our 5 nominees, we also agreed with Anna Paquin because we actually watched The Piano yesterday for the first time for Jordan. I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's actually doing like a specific accent. She's doing sign language. She's having to emote for Holly Hunter,
who is mute throughout the entire film.
So she's actually doing a lot, and she's super young, so it's pretty remarkable. Our other 4 nominees, we also have Winona Ryder for Age of Innocence, but we're also going to add Michelle Pfeiffer from The Age of Innocence. Just pick them both. And then these other 2 could be argued that they're lead actresses, but we're just going to say they're supporting, which is Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle and Andie MacDowell in Groundhog Day.
Yep.
So do you want to talk about any of those performances?
Yeah, I mean, do we want to talk about who we would put as the winner for each of these?
Let's talk through them real quick, and then we can decide our winner.
Yeah, so we already kind of talked about Anna Paquin. Meg Ryan is like not in Sleepless in Seattle as much as she is in You've Got Mail, which is sort of the counterpart to this movie. It's another Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan 90s movie. But I feel like she does a pretty decent job of being Meg Ryan in this movie. It's also like great romance movie, so no complaints. I don't think she's like slated to win in our awards, but she gets a nom.
Yeah, and I think, I like her better in You've Got Mail, but again, this is a pretty solid rom-com. And then, Andie MacDowell in Groundhog Day, I thought, obviously the movie's more about Bill Murray's character, but I think she brings a heart to the film that was really needed, because after however long I've seen The Same Day over and over again, I think her character is kind of the one that helps you go through it. because Bill Murray's trying to convince her about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought she was worth mentioning. This was also like the hardest category to come up with the 5, because I think 2 or 3 of the ones that were actually nominated were kind of like, yeah.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer and Winona Ryder.
Yeah, I didn't particularly love The Age of Innocence, but I feel like they both did a very good job with that film.
Yeah, as a film, I think it's kind of too long and kind of just a little meh as far as the story. I do like them as actors, and then Daniel Day-Lewis is good. And then, yeah, I think I actually prefer Michelle Pfeiffer in the movie, just from, I think her character's more interesting. And Winona Ryder's more of like a doe-eyed, I'm just trying to marry Daniel Day-Lewis kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But that's why I thought it was funny that Michelle Pfeiffer was nominated in real life, or Winona Ryder was nominated in real life, and not Michelle Pfeiffer. But, yeah, I think our winner's Anna Paquin.
It's definitely Anna Paquin. She goes on to be amazing in True Blood in her adulthood, but when we watched this movie, I was pretty stunned at how good she was for being a child, doing an accent, like, believably, acting believably, and doing sign language, and again, sort of playing, like, holding all the emotional weight and having to emote for Holly Hunter is a lot, like, for a child to do. So I feel like she did a great job. It's easy to say that she would win this category.
Yeah, so she was 11, which made her the second youngest winner. The youngest was Tatum O'Neal at age 10 for Paper Moon, which we saw semi-recently. Okay, so moving on to supporting actor. This one, I had a ton of possible nominees. So the real-life Oscars for Best Supporting Actor, Tommy Lee Jones won for The Fugitive. Leonardo DiCaprio was nominated for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Ralph Fiennes for Schindler's List. John Malkovich for In the Line of Fire. And Pete Postlethwaite for In the Name of the Father. He plays the father. That's one I just watched yesterday, which is actually really good. So for this one, we had 3 matching nominees, and then 2 other side nominees. So our 3 that we matched on were Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive, Gary Oldman for True Romance, Jeff Goldblum for Jurassic Park, and our other 2 nominees, which were kind of my picks, because you were considering the Schindler's List guys, Ralph Fiennes and Ben Kingsley.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about Schindler's List later. But so we have Lawrence Tate for Menace to Society, who plays O-Dog. And then we have Val Kilmer in Tombstone. So Val Kilmer in Tombstone, he basically has to play... So he's playing Doc Holliday, and he has tuberculosis in the film. So he's constantly coughing and sweating and sick, but he's like got this funny accent. And he's actually in a movie full of great mustaches. His is arguably the most unique because he has the little, it's more thin and small, like a Frenchman almost, but he has the little goatee part or the soul patch. Whereas the other guys really just have the big, full mustaches, which are also really nice. But I thought Val Kilmer stuck out more than any other person in that movie. And then Lawrence Tate in Menace to Society is a really good movie. I thought he brought a realness to I think the whole movie is really just dynamic and grounded, and I think his character is kind of like a wild card. You don't know what he's going to do, but you're still like rooting for him. He's not really a villain. He's just like, is the main character's friend, and he just has a crazy streak to him where he'll just act in violence at a whim.
Morally gray.
Yeah. I think we already agree. I really like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. I think
Yeah.
he kind of makes that movie. But we both agreed it's Gary Oldman.
It's easily Gary Oldman. Like, the first time I saw True Romance, I didn't even realize it was Gary Oldman. It's incredible just how much he disappears in this role, and he does such an incredible job. Like, I cannot...
Drexel.
Yeah.
That's his name.
I cannot stress enough that this is one of my favorite, like, actor transformations in a movie. Like, you literally cannot tell that it is him.
Yeah, also from True Romance, I almost nominated Brad Pitt, who plays Floyd, who has like 2 scenes, but he's so funny.
But he's like doesn't have as many lines. But overall, True Romance is a highly underrated movie.
We also considered Harvey Keitel, the piano, and Matthew McConaughey for Dazed and Confused.
But ultimately, I feel like...
But I really like R5.
Yeah, ultimately, I feel like Harvey Keitel is just Harvey Keitel in the piano and with face tattoos, and he's horny the whole time. And, you know, who's the other one?
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, I mean, it's McConaughey.
There's tons of people in Dazed and Confused you could have picked.
He doesn't have a ton of, like, screen time.
He's not in it that much.
Yeah.
But he has the iconic line. Okay, so now we're going to go on to Best Actress. Do you want to list off what the real life nominees were?
Yeah, so Best Actress won was Holly Hunter for The Piano, who basically has 0 speaking lines. Actually, I think does have next to no speaking lines in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Angela Bassett for What's Love Got to Do with It, where she plays Tina Turner. Stockard Channing for 6 Degrees of Separation. Emma Thompson for The Remains of the Day. And then Deborah Winger for Shadowlands. I've not seen all of those, but our nominees that we have are also Holly Hunter for The Piano. It's still
very good.
Still very good performance. Patricia Arquette for True Romance. And then we have kind of a couple more. So Angela Bassett for What's Love Got to Do with It.
Yeah, I saw that a few years ago, and I didn't really... The movie was meh, but I thought her performance was really good, and I liked Tina Turner, and so we just kept her in there.
Yeah, and then my personal pick was Mary Stuart Masterson from Benny and June. I feel like she does a really nice job of playing awkward and mentally ill, and it's kind of like a restrained role for her. But I enjoy that movie a lot. And then the one we both also picked and shared the nom for would be Laura Dern in Jurassic Park, which she does a pretty good job. I kind of skimmed through and was rewatching some parts with her today, and she does a pretty good job. I mean, it's no secret, like, I'm a Laura Dern stan, and so... You know,
when she first sees the dinosaurs and the face she makes, her and Sam Neill and the Jeep, it's just iconic.
Yeah. She's just so cute. Like, I love her, like, hair, and I just love her.
Okay, so our winner, I would think, would be Patricia Arquette.
I think it's Patricia Arquette. I actually would agree with that. She does such a nice job in this movie of playing... like the main girl in a romance, and it not being a completely, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like she plays like, this sounds bad, she plays white trash really well. Like, she just does. And I don't know, maybe it's like her cute little crooked teeth or something, but like I just love her. But yeah, I think it would go to Patricia Arquette. Although second to that, I think, is probably Holly Hunter.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's Patricia Arquette's best performance.
I would disagree with that.
You think Boyhood, or?
I would disagree. It's Lost Highway.
Oh yeah, Lost Highway's good too.
Lost Highway, she's incredible.
I just think the actual character in true romance
Very
really helps her. Yeah.
It's a very well developed character for sure.
Okay, so our next category, Best Actor.
Yes.
So the real life nominees are Tom Hanks, Philadelphia, he won. Daniel Day-Lewis in The Name of the Father. Lawrence Fishburne, What's Love Got to Do with It? Anthony Hopkins, The Remains of the Day, and Liam Neeson, Schindler's List. So I actually watched The Remains of the Day with Anthony Hopkins, and then Emma Thompson was also nominated. It was just really boring. Like, Anthony Hopkins is a butler. He has no emotion. He's just trying to be a butler. And the guy he's butlering for is like a exiled Nazi sympathizer in England. And it's all just like, man, it's like based off a book. But so we booted Anthony Hopkins. And actually, the only one we're keeping is Daniel Day-Lewis in The Name of the Father. So I'll talk about that real quick. So yeah, I watched it yesterday, and it's based off a real story about this Irish guy who goes to London, and he basically has no money, and he's just by this explosion that goes off because there was like a serial bomber in London in the 70s. And so anyway, the UK rushed this new terrorism law where they could basically imprison anybody for 7 days without charging them, and they basically coerced Daniel Day-Lewis's character and 3 other people to say they did the bomb even though they didn't, because they were literally like threatening to kill his father, and then they threatened this other guy by putting a gun in his mouth. So like they were really like not being good police officers. But his acting is awesome in it. He has so many like quick dialogue, funny dance moves, funny cry. Like he'll just like go off crying at like, it's just crazy the way he acts. So I have to nominate him. Your big nomination was David Thewlis
For Mike Leigh's Naked.
You talked about that one because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I say I have gotten into Mike Leigh. I've seen 2 Mike Leigh movies. But this one's not my favorite of the 2 that I saw, but it is a very, very, very good, like, jarring movie. Kind of feels like British Taxi Driver, like terrible main character who has terrible bad intentions, but it's like watching a car wreck. Like you just can't look away. David Thewlis plays this like grimy, disgusting, like conspiracy theorist that's like just sort of like a little bit of a narcissist and just wants to like talk to hear the sound of his own voice, and just will like rant and rave to anybody who will listen. He's just like a terrible, terrible character, but he does such a good job of playing it. And for reference, if you don't know who David Thewlis is, he plays Lupin in all of the Harry Potter movies. And that's most of what he's known for now. But yeah, great movie. I would definitely rewatch it. It's a very like freaky, like nauseating type of movie that it's not like a feel-good watch, but he does a very, very good job of. There's a part where he just like is pissed off about something because it's kind of like a series of unfortunate events for him that happen in the movie, and he just like shouts in the middle of the street at all these like people walking around. He's like, "Do you mind if I just yell right now because it'll make me feel better?" And he just like screams, and like yeah, he just does an incredible job.
Unhinged.
Completely unhinged. Yeah.
Okay, so our next nominee for Best Actor is Bill Murray in Groundhog Day.
He does. I love Bill Murray so much, but he does such a good job in this movie.
You made a good point earlier before we started taping about how, because it's, continuously the same day over and over and over again, it's really his performance that makes you not lose your own mind, because he's losing his mind and he's trying to figure it out, and it makes it. It could have been a performance where he's just doing the same thing over and over again, and there's elements of it that he is doing the same things, obviously, but like
There's a little bit of Inception here, though, where it's like a performance within a performance, because if you think about it, we are watching a movie where a man is living the same day over and over again. Bill Murray is on set having to deliver the same lines at an even more repetitive cadence than that. And he's having to keep the livelihood alive, and like he's having to keep like a sense of like stability in the movie without like, it's probably difficult for him to remember and figure out like, okay, I'm on day 3 of this same day over and over again, and I have to build on the final take of day 2's performance and build on that emotion. Like, that's actually very difficult if you think about it.
Yeah. That's also why we also nominated Andy McDowell.
Yeah, exactly.
For similar reasons. But our other 2 nominees are Harrison Ford in The Fugitive and Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, Harrison Ford, I mean, he's had so many good performances, but I think as far as the non-franchise movies, so not Indiana Jones and not Star Wars, I think The Fugitive is probably his best movie off the top of my head. It's my favorite of his.
So is
it Star Wars or Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
And then Robin Williams, I think, is our winner.
It's easily Robin Williams. Like, the Oscars took the L by not even nominating or recognizing him for this. Like,
and we're not that big of Mrs. Doubtfire fans. I don't even remember the last time I saw it, but like, he's so iconic, and it's just like,
it's an incredible, like, happy type of like heartfelt movie in a way. At the same time, it's kind of family friendly. It's like probably a movie everybody saw like when they were a kid. There's so many like memeable things about this movie, like help is on the way, dear. Like, so many different things. Like,
he's got like the wig on, but also like the whipped cream on his face.
When he has to like, he couldn't put on the makeup fast enough, so he has to like, like there's just so many good little like moments in this. And also like, I just miss Robin Williams existing on this planet. Like, it's sad that he's not here anymore, because he was such like a beautiful soul, and like, I can't imagine anyone else playing this and doing it justice. Like, I feel like anyone else doing this would have just made it feel kind of like, I don't know, kind of like White Chicks, like the Wayans brothers. Like, it would just feel like weird and like creepy in like a bad way, versus like Robin Williams sort of brings like a wholesomeness to it, you know?
Yeah, he was nominated for Good Morning Vietnam, Dead Poets Society, and The Fisher King, all before 1993. Didn't win, but then he won for supporting actor in Good Will Hunting in 1998. Okay, so now we'll move on to director. So
yeah,
so the real nominees were, you want to read those?
Yeah, so the real nominee, the winner, was Steven Spielberg for Schindler's List. Then there was Jim Sheridan for In the Name of the Father, Jane Campion for The Piano, James Ivory for The Remains of the Day, and Robert Altman for Shortcuts, which I'm not even familiar with. So I think we had one that we agreed with here, which
we had these 2.
Well, we technically had, it's very odd to me that Steven Spielberg directed Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year.
Yeah, I don't know the in-depth production details of that. I'm assuming he probably finished one with a decent amount of time in between finishing the other one, and it just, because Jurassic Park, I'm sure, was a summer movie, and then I think Schindler's List was a December movie probably. So it was probably a 6-month difference.
Yeah.
But it's still crazy.
It is crazy, though, because they're just polar opposite movies.
Yeah.
And I get why it's the win for him is Schindler's List at the Oscars, because it's a very Oscar movie, and I respect that movie a lot. It's just not one that I feel like ever revisiting, because it's just an incredibly hard watch. And I also think that, we'll talk about Schindler's List in a little bit, but we think that Steven Spielberg should have been nominated for Jurassic Park directorship. So yeah, I think that's probably the only one that we technically agree with. After that, we have Tony Scott for True Romance, Mike Leigh for Naked, the Hughes brothers for Menace to Society. That's a tongue twister, and Richard Linklater for Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, we actually both had Tony Scott as well, but yeah, the Hughes brothers. I think that was like their first movie, and there's so many little decisions they made that I really appreciate, and there's a lot of early 90s like black cinema coming of age type stories, but I think this one's the more like real, like
raw.
Like, I don't want to spoil it, but the ending like feels more real than any of the other types of movies that are examples of those type of movies. Just because of how the character arcs are portrayed in that film. But yeah, you really wanted Mike Leigh.
Yeah, it's probably the most like well-known Mike Leigh movie, and most people regard it as his magnum opus. I think there was a lot of very specific choices that he made in the movie. Stylistically, I think even just like the composition of the entire movie as a whole is just like kind of really, really good. Like, that didn't sound very smart the way I said it, but I think in general, like, I watched it and I gave it 4 out of 5, but I was kind of like, I've been thinking about it ever since, and it kind of feels like a movie that I'll come back to over the course of time and like revisit. I feel that way about most dark movies though, but I also think this is his most like critically regarded film, so it's a shame that it wasn't nominated.
Yeah, then Richard Linklater, like,
it's more like we would say this because we know what he would later do. I don't even know if Dazed and Confused is my favorite Richard Linklater movie, but I think this was like his earliest signs of life. And it's obvious that Dazed and Confused kind of like became a prolific movie and, you know, became like really well known. So I think it ought to be nominated just for the fact that it's sort of a time capsule.
yeah, I think just the movie title, Dazed and Confused, and just the vastness of the cast, where there's so many characters and little storylines that happen, and it's almost one of those movies that transcends movies, kind of also like Jurassic Park, where it's just like, oh, it's awesome dinosaurs for the first time. This was kind of like, not that it was the first movie to do that. I mean, it was Richard Linklater's first time to do this, where it's like, here's a lot of unique characters and a specific setting, and it's more of the just like hang out and watch it type of movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're both leaning Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the win here. It's Steven Spielberg's probably most popular film of all time.
It's definitely his apex mountain where he
That's
like,
what I mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he also had Schindler's List. Because like, he has so many good movies. Like even just Jaws in '75 was really
Yeah.
possibly his best. Raiders of the Lost Ark, but like, there's so many good ones. We also we almost thought about picking Jane Campion. You were thinking of maybe doing Henry Selick of The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, but when you actually think about it, it's kind of like, if you were to ask anybody who directed Nightmare Before Christmas, people are like, oh, Tim Burton, because he's kind of the mastermind behind most of it. But
It's just producer.
he's just producer. And like, yeah, he was very involved in the project, but like, ultimately, Henry Selick is the director and was in charge of the creative vision. But yeah, it was close for that one though.
Okay, so we're going on to Best Picture. We have 5 honorable mentions, and we're going to do our top 10, even though in real life,
This was before they did 10
Yeah, they only had 5 nominees, so obviously Schindler's List won, and then they had The Fugitive, and The Name of the Father, The Piano, and The Remains of the Day. So let's just talk briefly about Schindler's List. That's just going to be an honorable mention for us. After seeing The Zone of Interest and just seeing another like Holocaust type movie, and then looking back on Schindler's List 30 years later, it's kind of like it's still important. It's still well made. It's still, important to watch. But I feel like it's also like, oh, I just have these names on this list that I'm trying to save type of thing. It's kind of just trying to do one thing on a topic or story of the Holocaust, which is like a vast array of sad tragedies and terrible evilness. So like for them to just focus on Liam Neeson and his list, I get it, but it's also kind of out of all this type of stories you could have done or that they could have not, like the Oscars obviously needed to like make a Best Picture winner out of the Holocaust almost, like, and I think Steven Spielberg was like the director to do it, and
he makes it very palatable.
Yeah.
And like I say palatable not in terms of like it's an easy watch, because it is a difficult watch still, but I think in a way, I think I'm coming off of having seen The Zone of Interest also. The entirety of Schindler's List sort of rides on this supposition that everyone agrees that the Holocaust was bad, right? Okay, cool. So now you're going to like Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Whereas The Zone of Interest it sort of flips it on its head and is like, what if we did a film about the bad guys and how bad what they're doing is? And we're not going to like hold your hand through the process and spoon feed you the color grading of the red coat so that you know what you're seeing is a gut punch. Like, it more is just like, here is what's happening in its rawest realness, and this is how gross it is. And not like in your face like shock. It's more like, I don't know, it's like more hyper realistic to like what would actually have been going on back then, versus I feel like Schindler's List is like evocative in a way of like trying to get you to feel like shit for what happened, when you're like, I already feel like shit for what happened, and everyone in this movie doesn't want this to happen. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I also think that Schindler's List was kind of manufactured to be an Oscar movie.
Exactly.
Whereas something like The Zone of Interest was more of just like a 10-year passion project. And
again, I don't hate Schindler's List.
We're just not going to nominate it 30 years later.
Yeah.
Is basically what we're trying to say.
I think that there is a better movie about the Holocaust that came out last year.
Okay, so our other 4 our honorable mentions, I had The Piano and In the Name of the Father, which were also nominated in real life. Just not good enough to put in our top 10. And then you also wanted to mention Sleepless in Seattle, which we kind of gave Meg Ryan a supporting actress nom for that.
Good movie,
and then
maybe not like best of.
Yeah, we couldn't quite get that to top 10. And then What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, it's another really good one. I haven't seen it in a really long time, but yeah, I like that one quite a bit. It's got a good ensemble cast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good characters in that. So I'm going to go from number 10 and we'll go backwards up to number 1 with our winner. And this is very scientific. So this is actually ranked nominees.
Yeah, we both ranked our top 10 movies, and then we basically combined them through a point system to come up with our joint top 10, which will be our nominations for Best Picture. So what do we have at number 10?
So number 10 is Rudy. So do you want to talk about Rudy? I haven't seen it.
You have to slow clap. No.
I've seen it since like high school.
Rudy was just like a quintessential 12-year-old Sam has the DVD and loves college football and just watched it on loop for 5+ years. Sean Astin is just a wholesome, oh, doughy eye. I want to play football for Notre Dame, and that's all he wants to do. But then there's like lots of family drama, and Jon Favreau is in it as his friend. It's just a great college football movie. It's a great underdog story. And I thought about nominating Sean Astin for Best Actor, but it was kind of, there's too many good choices above him, and I don't think that movie's really an acting movie. It's just like a
movie
story football movie.
Yeah.
But based on our super sophisticated point system, it got to number 10, and Schindler's List couldn't even beat Rudy, so too bad. All right, number 9.
All right, number 9 goes to Naked,
which I haven't seen, so this was because you had it higher.
Yeah, I've kind of already talked a lot about it, but I definitely think you should see it. Again, it falls into the same camp as like Taxi Driver, or like just any kind of movie where there's a like I don't know what you would call it. I'm thinking of the chaotic, neutral, lawful scale right now in my head, and I'm trying to think of like where David Thewlis's character sits. It's definitely like chaotic evil in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to think about it a little bit more, but genuinely, like, the score is incredible and drives the movie forward because it's this like fervent, plucky sort of like composition that makes you feel like something bad is about to happen. The entire premise of the movie is that David Thewlis's character is like down and out in London and is sort of like just going from like house to house all in the middle of the night. It's basically all set in one night. And yeah, he's just sort of like having an existential crisis and is ranting to people about it. And he's like getting involved in crime, hurting women, yelling at people, stuff like that. But then at the same time, he's also encountering evil in the form of like other characters that is far more evil than him. And so it's an interesting character study because you're like, you can recognize from the very get-go in the first scene of the movie, you're like, okay, our main character is a bad person. But then they pit him against even worse characters and they like give him a chance to sort of be like the upstanding guy. And so it gives you this like very confused point of view because you're like, I don't want to root for him, but in a way, like, this is how real people are in real life. And like, it's one of the most thought-provoking movies I've seen in a while. And you need subtitles because they have such thick accents in this movie. But yeah, definitely need to re-see that. But that's number 9. So go ahead with
number 8, we have Menace to Society.
I finally saw this.
Yes. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it. It's basically revolves around a guy who just basically turned 18 in LA, and he's trying to navigate his life and figure out what he's going to do. And there's all the ramifications of his environment that he has to deal with and what his friends are doing. So it's really a coming-of-age story, but it's just really well done. Number 7, Benny and June. This was your number 2, spoiler alert, but I didn't even have it on my list, so it's dropped down to 7.
I showed it to you like a couple years back, and you were like, I don't like this. And I was like, every girl has gone through a Johnny Depp phase. Let's just all face it. Let's all admit it. And this is like honestly one that holds up for me after being 13 and watching this and then watching it again. It's just like one of my favorite movies. He also does a lot of like method acting in the way that he acts. And so a lot of this character that he plays in this movie is inspired by Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin. And so you can see that.
Yeah, that's why I'm interested in rewatching it at some point just because of that, because I have recently watched Buster Keaton movies. So I think when I watch this the first time I didn't really understand what he was doing, but
he's basically like hyper fixated on those like old Hollywood, old silent movie stars, and so he just sort of evokes that like persona around Mary Stuart Masterson, who is like deeply mentally ill, and so it kind of brings her out of her shell a little bit to like see this weirdo guy hanging out in trees and wearing like a fedora, which, yes, ladies, he's wearing a fedora in the movie, but get over it. But also Aidan Quinn is really good in the movie, and the soundtrack to the movie is really, really good. Have a Little Faith in Me, 500 Miles by The Pretender. Like, opening shot of the movie is the 500 Miles song. It's a great movie. I love this movie. It's one you can like fall asleep to, too. Like, it's a happy one. I love that one.
Okay, number 6, Dazed and Confused. We kind of talked about that one. Number 5, The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Honestly, like,
I'm glad we got an animated movie in here.
It's a masterpiece that this movie got made, because if you know anything about like just how difficult stop motion animation is, like, I think that I read that they could like film a couple of like seconds of the movie, or like maybe up to 3 minutes of the movie, and it would take an entire day.
Yeah, it takes forever.
And so the movie itself, to make it, took forever. And just the whole Tim Burton Disney fiasco is like an interesting thing. If you want to know more about it, like look it up. But it's interesting the fact that like he worked for them. They sort of like parted ways with him. And then they were like, wait, we actually want you back for this. Like, it's interesting to say the least. But also I think this is like a movie that I constantly go back to. You know, all weird girls forever will always just love Jack and Sally. It's just like the ultimate couple.
Yeah, I just love all the intricate details of all the little outfits, characters. Like,
it's so silly.
The world they build, the Halloween town, is so iconic now. Like, it's a generational thing. Like, I understand why it wasn't nominated in real time, but I definitely think 30 years now, it should be. It would have
huge legacy.
Yeah, so it's our 5th slot. So if we were just doing 5 nominees, we would still have this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, our number 3 and 4 were basically tied. So it's Groundhog Day and Jurassic Park.
I have a really special place in my heart for Groundhog Day. Jurassic Park is just like, we have to admit that it's good. It's very, very good. They've done a million other Jurassic Park movies since then. None of them are as good as the first one. Like, Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt be damned. Nothing beats the original.
Well, it was the first real time they had dinosaurs on the movie that actually looked like dinosaurs or CGI.
They look really good.
It's crazy how good they still look 30 years later with all the terrible CGI that has happened since.
Early 2000s CGI looks bad now. How did they get it to look good? It's insane.
And just the casting choices we talked about, where we nominated Laura Dern, we nominated Jeff Goldblum, I almost nominated Sam Neill. And then there's also like Wayne Knight, Samuel Jackson have small parts.
Newman.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, yeah.
It's just a great movie. It's just, like, I don't know how you can watch it and not like it, or not say it's good. Like,
yeah.
It's just another iconic movie.
But yeah, Groundhog Day is a movie that's like, I showed you probably within the last like 6 months, because I don't think you'd ever seen it.
Yeah, I saw it for the first time recently.
And I like it because it's Bill Murray, and like I saw it as a kid and I liked it because it was Bill Murray, but like revisiting it this time around, I was like, oh, this is actually like one of my favorite movies. Like, this is going on my favorite movies list. It's silly, but it has like this really nice like kind of heart element to it that's really cute. But yeah, that's why it's up so high.
All right, number 2 is The Fugitive. This one is kind of like Rudy, where I watched it so many times as a young tweenager to high schooler. I feel like it was always on TNT. I think I got the DVD fairly early in my DVD collection journey. Again, yeah, Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones, Joey Pants, just so many great little police characters, and
It sucks you in to the action. Like, you immediately are like, I understand what's going on.
Yes, and you're immediately like interested in how it's going to go, because even if you're not sure if he did it or not, it's still like, from the perspective of Tommy Lee Jones, and one of the best parts is when he's in that water tunnel and Harrison Ford's like, I didn't kill my wife, and Tommy Lee Jones says, I don't care, because he's just like the police officer trying to figure out what to do, or he's a U.S. Marshal, I should say.
Yeah.
Which they made a sequel to this called U.S. Marshals without Harrison Ford, but they had Tommy Lee Jones, which is actually also a good movie. But The Fugitive is just...
I love Harrison Ford. Like, he's such a babe. I don't care how old he is now. He's amazing.
Well, he starts off with that crazy beard that he then shaves off. And then there's obviously the guy with the one-arm guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, our number one and our winner, which was both of our number ones, True Romance.
Yeah.
We've already nominated the director, the actress, and one of the lead, or the one supporting.
It's just like such a vibey movie, and it's literally just like the whole. If you haven't seen True Romance, you should see it. I mean, solely for the fact that Gary Oldman, like, plays a crazy drug dealer with dreadlocks, which is insane, and like gold teeth. Like, just watch it for that.
And the Brad Pitt.
And the Brad Pitt character is insane too. But like, the whole premise of the movie is basically that like these two people find each other. It's a guy who starts flirting with a prostitute, and it's like the weird feeling of like, does she actually like me, or is she just trying to get me to sleep with her to get paid? And turns out like they actually love each other. And then it's sort of like a drug heist type of movie, but it's also a romance.
And a road trip movie.
And
the ending is incredible. In the hotel room.
Incredible. And like the set decorations and like just the vibrant colors and like her outfits, like the leopard print and red, and like just everything about this movie is like iconic.
We've been saying iconic a lot because a lot of these movies are.
But this one is just like, I mean, it's truly one of my favorite movies of all time, but it's one that like I'm proud to say is like just one of, like, it's so me. Like, it's just one of those movies that like just really resonates with me in a weird way because it's got everything. Like, it's not a one-note movie. It truly feels like very original in a lot of ways because I can't think of a movie that's similar to this, like off the top of my head. Patricia Arquette is amazing.
Yeah, it's one of Quentin Tarantino's scripts.
Yeah, I think that's another reason that I like it.
He was on a podcast I listened to where he gave a story about how he basically wrote Reservoir Dogs and True Romance kind of around the same time, and he directed Reservoir Dogs in 92, and then this came out in 93, but he gave Tony Scott the direction keys as kind of like a deal to get them both made.
I always forget that Tarantino's involved in this, but it's like if you like Quentin Tarantino, but you wish he had made something that was more of a romance, this is it. Like, I don't feel like Quentin Tarantino's ever done like a romance movie when this is Quentin Tarantino mashed up with a good romance.
Yeah, I mean, like, he has Kill Bill, which is like the...
Definitely not a romance. Yeah, like, I guess what I'm saying is that like this has all of the things that you would love about a Quentin Tarantino movie, but throw in a really good romance where you actually want to root for the characters to like be together. Like, you really don't need any more emotional buy-in to a good thriller than two lead characters that are perfect for each other in every way, and you're like, they just need to be together. Yeah, I love that movie. I want to rewatch it. I love it so much.
So just to recap, our winners for Best Picture, A True Romance; for Best Director, Steven Spielberg in Jurassic Park; for Best Actor, we have Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire; for Best Actress, we picked Patricia Arquette in True Romance; for Best Supporting Actor, we picked Gary Oldman in True Romance; and then Supporting Actress, Anna Paquin, The Piano.
Yep, I like our awards.
Yeah, this was really fun. We might do this for more years in the episodes to come, but our next episode will probably be about the 2023 Oscars that are about to happen this upcoming weekend, and we'll just recap that. And yeah,
Thanks
for listening.